Well, maybe I should just get started here. My name is Daniel Steger. Thank you for joining us. I'm the co-chair with Jessica Welsh of the RDC, the Residential Design Committee. And we've partnered today on this presentation with the Small Practices Group, as well as the PR and Marketing group. So thank you everyone for joining us. I think this is a great way to kick off the new year. A little something that's very important to our business development, but that isn't related to energy code or detailing of an exterior shell. So a couple housekeeping things before we start. If you have any questions, we just invite you to put those into the chat right away, and we'll monitor that. There'll be a Q&A session at the end, but if there is something that's immediate and pressing and you need a response, that second, of course, you can kind of raise your hand or just say, "Excuse me, could you back up a little bit?" So this is very laid back. Kyle, did you have anything that you wanted to say?
Just quickly, so sorry, I have a cold, so I sound a little wild today. Susie and I are the co-chairs for the Small Practices Network, and just wanted to both thank Daniel for taking the initiative to set this up and inviting us to co-host with the PR and marketing group. And then also thank Larry for coming. And also, if there's no pressure to put your camera on, but in the culture of the meetings, it's totally it's it will be fine. So if you're eating lunch or something, feel free to keep it off. But you're also welcome to turn it on. We like seeing people's faces.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Thanks. Abigail, I know we haven't spoken, but you're co-chair of the marketing group. Do you have anything to say quickly? I'm putting you on the spot. I know that.
Oh, that's okay. I don't mind being put on the spot. Yeah, so my name is Abby. I recently took over co-chair of the Marketing and PR Network with my co-chair Stephanie Salzman, who I think is very under the weather at the moment, so I don't think she's able to make it anymore. But we're happy to be there. We're happy to help, and we are participating in next week's event at the BSA. I think it's on Thursday at 5 p.m. So yeah, I didn't realize that we would have an opportunity to partner with other committees. So I think it's really exciting and I'm happy to be here. I will be eating my lunch very soon, but not at the moment. So I'll keep my camera on for now. Very nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you, Abby. Just break the rules. Just apologize later.
Yeah.
That's my motto
I love it. I'm good
with
with that.
with the BSA.
Hmm.
Anyway. All right, well, why don't we get started? Larry Lindner is joining us. He's a copywriter, author, journalist. Quick bio here. Larry Lindner has written about architecture and interior design for publications that include the Washington Post, the Boston Globe Sunday Magazine, the Los Angeles Times, New England Home, Cape Cod Home, Newport Home, Green Builder, and Qualified Remodeler. He has also penned 10 books, including two New York Times bestsellers and many others that reached the top 100 on Amazon and or Barnes Noble. Additionally, he wrote a widely syndicated biweekly column for the Washington Post for several years, as well as a monthly column for the Boston Globe. He has freelanced for print venues such as Condé Nast Traveler, Reader's Digest, O, the Oprah Magazine, and many others. When he is not writing books or articles, he is copywriting for artists and guitar makers, for HVAC companies, for builders, lighthouse repairers, interior designers, and yes, for architects. I'm happy to welcome him here today to talk to us about how hiring a copywriter can help an architect make his or her client foundation more solid. Larry, it's all up to you now. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Daniel. You made me sound so interesting. I can't wait to hear what I have to say. And thanks to all of you for staying in today to attend this webinar. So with that, let me just share my screen. Just give me one sec. Um,
Well, Larry's doing that in the chat way at the top. There is a link if you need to enter your or if you need a certificate for your learning units.
Okay. Just bear with me one sec. Okay, can you all see that? Is
No.
You cannot see it.
Oh,
Okay.
there we
Um,
go.
how about that? Good, good, good.
Oh, we
Okay.
can.
Okay. So I want to start out by talking about what is a writer like me talking to a group of architects like you, which is a very reasonable question. And it starts with where I was born and raised. So this is the apartment building I grew up in, and it's in a town in Queens, New York called Maspeth. And Maspeth isn't like cool gentrified Queens like Long Island City or Astoria. Maspeth is like if an exurb of Bratislava and Dayton, Ohio, circa 1954 had a love child, it would be Maspeth. And it was the most uninspiring and uninspired streetscape you could imagine. This is the built environment. If you look all the way over to the right, you could see the beginning of firescapes, and firescapes are all around this building. They just don't show up much in this picture. And when I was growing up, they didn't even have that rock and green awning at the front entrance. It was just as flat a facade as you can be. And you can't even see my apartment from this picture because the building is built on a hill, and the six of the floors face the front. The two floors were on the other side down the hill, and they were called upper gardens and lower gardens instead of saying basement and upper basement. And I lived in Upper Gardens and I lived in the H stack of apartments, and my apartment number was UGH, UGG. So I was the epicenter of this UGG built environment. And it always really bothered me. I grew up wanting what I saw on television. I wanted pretty and nice to walk past and yards and picket fences. And I wanted to be able to say things like, it's upstairs or it's in the garage or in the family room, and or the dog needs to be fed, and weren't allowed to have pets, so we couldn't have had any of that. And it bothered me all through my childhood. This was the view from UGG, which was to say there was no view at all. If you could see through that window, you would be looking at another window surrounded by brick. And the kitchens didn't look like this. There was no shaker cabinetry or pool pulls or pendant lighting or stainless steel appliances. Everything was white. The walls were white, the cabinets were white, the appliances were white, until everything was avocado. And that was even worse. So I thought a lot about what things look like, what streetscapes and the built environment look like growing up. And for about 20 minutes in college, I even thought, gee, maybe I should be an architect. And then it came to me about how good I am at like doing a vision. So this is as good as I'm good at reacting to the built environment, but I'm not good at envisioning the built environment. And to let you know how not good I am at it, I drew this last week in preparation for this talk. And I always had the same thing in my head, a house with a front-facing gable. Of course, I didn't know what a gable was when I was a kid, but I actually had a lot going on. Like I was the architect, I was the landscape architect with that rock and tree over there. I had the hardscaping with the wonderful picket fence, and I was even the interior decorator with the curtains in the windows. And that looks like a cat over there at the bottom on the right, but it's actually a dog. So to me, that was the whole picture, and I always wanted it, but I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do that. So I went with what I was meant to be, which was a writer. I did finally get to scratch the itch of living in a wonderful house with gables, and it's that little cape down there at the lower left with the arrow pointing it to it. So I never got the front-facing gable that I wanted, but I did get the gables on the sides. And this is in Hingham. We live about a 5-minute walk from the water, where I take my dog every day, and we have a barn that was turned into a garage, and we have an upstairs and a basement and fireplaces and no square footage, but lots of wide board floors and lots of charm. So I did get to scratch that architectural itch finally. I also um, kind of had an opportunity to have some skin in the architectural game, not financially, but certainly a very involved kind of way. For 16 years, I was on the board of Hingham Cemetery, which is a pretty special historical cemetery dating back to the 1600s. And in that cemetery, there's a chapel called the Ames Chapel that was built in 1886. And you can see it's Queen Anne style with some stick elements. But it had fallen into unbelievable disrepair. And what happened was it was a funeral chapel when it was first built, and then nobody was using it by around 1920. And this is what happened after almost a century. And I said, let's bring it back. And not just bring it back, but let's repurpose it. Let's make it a place where there'd be weddings and cultural events and all this kind of stuff. And we can go to our town CPC and get money from them and the Mass Historical Commission and get money from them, and we can make this happen. And everybody, including my own board, said to me, it's never going to happen. No one's going to go to fun events in a cemetery. No one's going to go to a wedding in a cemetery. And it's disastrous. And some people even suggested we raise the building, which was horrible to me. And we actually don't have a lot of Queen Anne stock in Hingham. We have a lot of very early colonials from the 16 and 1700s, but not this. And I didn't want to lose it. It was so special. And I dragged them along. I went back to CPC 2 years in a row. We did get a nice grant from the Massachusetts Historical Commission, and I got my way. And we refurbished the chapel, and it was so great, and I learned so much. We worked with a firm. They started out as Menders, Torrey, and Spencer, and then they became Spencer and Vogt. They do a lot of architectural preservation, and so much was going on here. The building had no heat, it had no water, it had no sewer. We had to bring lines in from the street. I had to learn about curing the roadway and waiting a certain amount of time after it was cured to be able to go and do the next thing. And it was fascinating and it was terrific. And so I completely understand the pride that you take in the work that you do, and I admire it. This is just another view of the main floor of the chapel before it was done. Take a look at that boarded up thing in the middle. That's that stained glass window on the right that had marring blotches, and we had to get that taken care of by a stained glass guy. Um, the thing under the window is actually the uh, framework of a new staircase that went in, but everything else is the way it always used to be. There used to be a captain staircase in the corner that was so steep it would have been impossible. This was how the basement looked before we finished. We had to actually dig down 3 feet in the basement to give it headroom, and then we did it up, and it's got a caterer's kitchen now and bathrooms. Remember, there was no plumbing, so there had been no sinks or anything. We were proud of it, and it's been very successful. We've had all kinds of events there. Every year we put on a Dead of Winter art series where we have music and literature readings and performances. And we've had people like Tony Bennett's backup band and Celeste Ng, the author, and off-Broadway productions. And what people had called Larry's Folly turned out not to be. We actually do have weddings in the chapel. So I get it. I get how important architecture is and the built environment and what could be done with it and how it can be used or even repurposed. And that's why I'm glad to be with you here today. I think what you guys do is just incredible. So now I want to talk to you about how my skills as a writer can help up your game as an architect. There's a marriage here that can go on that improves everybody's lives. So there's a lot of different ways that a writing set comes into play for an architect. So one of them, the obvious one, is a print ad. When you look at print ads in the shelter magazines like New England Home and other ones, a lot of what you see is page after page of a beautiful house with a dramatic sky. Think of a Hutker ad. He often has something gorgeous that he designed, and then above it there's orange and clouds and purple and blue from the sky. The problem is in the magazines, they all kind of tend to meld into each other. You turn page after page and they all kind of become the same picture. And I was working with Adams and Beasley. Most of you probably have heard of them. They're a high-end residential builder in the Boston area, and they wanted to do a print ad. And I said, let's do a print ad with testimonials from collaborators that you've worked with and also clients. And let's get other people telling your story for you, because that will be stronger than just a picture of something gorgeous that you've done. So I did this labor-intensive thing where I went out and met in person and talked to collaborators that they had worked with and their clients and took loads of notes and then got these pearls of quotes from the different people. And so we did this for a print ad. I think this was in Boston Home. So this is a quote from Bridget Williams, and she is actually one of your loveliest competitors in the Boston area that you're ever going to meet. She's an architect right downtown, and she's just a wonderful person. And in the midst of all the stuff that she said to me, she said, they never say you can't do that. If a client wants it, they find a way to make it happen. And Adams and Beasley has blue in their logo, so we got blue in this, in the graphics. And Bridget, bless her heart, this isn't even her staircase, but we felt it worked for the ad, so she let us misrepresent her and make believe that this was her staircase. So this was on 1/3 of a page of the magazine, right? And then you looked at the stuff and you turned the page, and this came up in the same placement on the spread. And this was a quote by Stephanie Rossi. I don't know if you know any of you know her. She's from Spazio Rosso Interior Design, and her quote was, they don't try to take over the vision, they bring your vision to life. And again, we color coordinated, and Stephanie wasn't thrilled with this particular picture, but it worked. And she let it go, and we did that. And so then, where is the client in all of this? That was when you turn the next page and you see the quote, there must actually the quote is behind all of you, but I think it says something like there must have been some stumbling blocks, but I never felt them, or I never felt any. And we almost got permission to use her name, and I think we would have gotten permission to use the name, which would have been even stronger. But the deadline for the ad was bearing down on us, and we just had to get it in there. So we just had to say Back Bay Client. And they felt, Adams and Beasley, and I felt that this was a stronger way to spend thousands of dollars to put themselves out there rather than to have a gorgeous picture. Um, One thing I want to say to you about print ads is if you're new to marketing yourselves with the written word, you might not want to go this route. These are print ads are good for very established companies that are just saying, "Hey, we're here, we're in the game, we're big deals." But I think there are less expensive ways to put your money to work for you to get the word out there. But print ads have a place. They may not be the first place, kind of what I'm thinking. Another thing that happens when I talk to architects in particular is a lot of times they have something interesting going on that they don't realize they're excited by it, but they don't realize that other people would be excited about it, perhaps the general public. Um, this is a picture that was shown to me by Scott Butler. He's a principal at Wilson Butler Architects, and their specialty is designing cruise ships. And Scott and I met. We live in the same town, and our kids were in school together, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and so we just got to talking that way. And I thought, gee, an architect who designs cruise ships. I never thought about that, but yeah, somebody's got to design them. So he kind of had me there. And then he and his partner, Scott Wilson, were talking to me about how cruise ships in the 80s were kind of like the Love Boat. They were like a kind of Scandinavian person's idea of what a Caribbean cruise ship would be, which would be like a lot of pinks and pistachios. And they were bringing cruise ships forward and making them a lot slicker and better looking. And he showed me this picture, and I was like, okay. And then he showed me this. It was a pool deck, and I didn't really understand it, but apparently all that white stuff on the side is very special. And the way the recliners are is not just a weird mashup of recliners. There's an order to it. And he told me a lot more stuff too, and um, qualities of the ship that are down below. And I thought, this is cool. This is neat. I want to pitch it to the Globe. And I did. and it got into the Sunday magazine, and it was great publicity for them. And they had not thought about, and by the way, they didn't have to pay for this. The Globe paid me to write the article. All they had to do was keep talking to me and teaching me about what they did in their designing of cruise ships. And there's all kinds of elements. So a lot of times, just by having a discussion with a writer who's used to pulling people's stories from them, you discover with the writer that, oh, you've got something to say that's unique. This is your secret sauce. This is what's special about you. And it was a lot of fun. And the two Scotts, Scott Butler is the guy I know on the left, Scott Wilson is his partner on the right. They even got their 15 minutes of fame. Was a picture of them that went with the article, and it's a little fuzzy because it was a rush and they didn't have time to get a new picture in time. So we used this one, and it was a lot of fun. And then I went on to write about them for the Los Angeles Times travel section. So there was more mileage out of it. And again, they didn't pay for that article. The LA Times paid me for the article. So it worked for everybody all around. And that business of your secret sauce is in you and you may not have even articulated it to yourself yet is very important. This is a post that Daniel posted before he and I even started working together. I knew him by that point, but we weren't collaborating in a professional sense. And he told me that he and his husband had just bought this house, and he showed me pictures. And he said they're going to like redo a lot of the inside. And I said, Daniel, that's a through line. That's a great story. You have to immediately start posting about this house. And then over the years that you redo it, you've got to show people what you've been doing in your house. You're an architect and you're doing your own house, and it's a really cool house. This is not a split level ranch someplace. It's really neat. It's a story in itself. And he was like, oh, yeah, that could be interesting. And I just sat on him and sat on him and sat on him. And by the way, that's my secret sauce. I will annoy you to death until you do what I think you should do to promote yourself. So he finally listened to me, and he put up this post about buying a new house. And very quickly, like right off the bat, he got more than 100 likes. And he said, Larry, I never got um, more than 100 likes or anywhere near 100 likes on anything I've ever done. And anyway, I think it was soon after that we started working together. Daniel had another piece of story in him that I didn't know about till after we started working together. The movie American Fiction had come out. It was in theaters, and his house was the setting for much of that movie. And he didn't tell me about it. And I wanted to strangle him. And I was like, Daniel, that's an article. That's a really fun story that your house was chosen by these Hollywood people to be the set of a movie. That means you're a true architect and you've got to write about this. So I bugged the crap out of him until he wrote an essay on it. And we went back and forth, and there was a lot of editing and iteration and insertion of humor and all of that. And sure enough, the Boston Globe bought the article. And so he got paid to promote himself. They paid him for this article, and it was really cool. And he got a lot of nice comments. But the best part of it wasn't the byline he got up at the top. It was this that he got at the bottom. They said, here he is. This is the name of his firm. You can find him. And lo and, we just thought this would be great publicity. But two potential clients actually reached out to him and started kicking the tires with him about doing different projects. So this, I don't know if it did, but it could have even potentially led to money directly, not just more publicity. So again, you have a story in you that sometimes just bouncing who you are off of a writer who's used to pulling stories from people can something can crystallize that's worth talking about. A lot of times, what you talk about as an architect may not directly be like, I enlarged this room, or I did the bump out, or I got rid of the bump out, or whatever. It's just you as an interesting person, right? That's somehow adjacent to your being an architect. So this was an architect that I did some social media posting for, and they're in an airplane, right? Obviously, and it says, what fun to be flown by your own client to their summer camp in Maine, turning a 3-hour drive for a site visit into a 30-minute plane ride. So there's no work being shown there, right? There's no before and after. There's no, here's how we're dealing with this project, but there is a lot of, hey, I'm somebody. I count in this game. I have clients who are flying me around. And the architect and I felt this was a good way to put them out there. And also, it can get kind of grating if everything you post about yourself is here's what I'm working on, and I moved this over 2 feet, and I put the zero entry shower over here. There has to be some buoyancy to it, and there's always ways to add buoyancy. Um, Another thing that a copywriter can do for you is either create a website, help you completely reshuffle your website, or help you with a website tune-up. So this is on the homepage of a website that was I actually did for an artisanal guitar maker. He makes custom guitars. And I was introduced to him by a graphic designer that I had worked with who wanted to pair me with a website designer. And again, I got testimony. These are big deal second tier guitar players. They're all, it's not Eric Clapton, but it's a level at which serious guitar people and serious music listeners of guitar would know these guys. The middle one is kind of the biggest one. He's in Nashville. And just to read his quotes to you, because I know they're a little hard to see. I won't read all three. It says, I had to have, and the guitar company is Cargie. The guy's name is Randy Springus, but Cargie was his mother's maiden name. I had to have a Cargie guitar the first time I tried it. It's the finest instrument I've ever played. They're built a lot like the Tellys and S styles of the late 50s to early 60s, which is when I think of the great era of Fender was. There's just something about it. It feels like home. So they're all great like that. But there was one opportunity that was really missed in this website. I wanted the developer to do plugins so you could hear each kind of guitar being played. To me, that was so important for somebody trying to market themselves as a maker of guitars because these guys all their guitars were all fashioned a little differently for them and they bring different sounds out of them. But the website developer didn't have that level of expertise. And I really felt, gee, that was an opportunity denied. Because if you're selling sound, you should be able to show people sound. But anyway, websites is something a copywriter can work on for you. Copywriter can also do an entire book for you. Now, you've seen books from architects. A lot of them are a book about a particular fabulous project. I'm a little I look at those a little warily because they're expensive to do, and I always fear that they will be interesting to the owner of the home and to the architect, but are they going to be interesting to anybody else? Um, Maybe yes, maybe no. This was a book, again, this is an Adams Beasley thing. They wanted Eric Adams, who's kind of the face of the company, he wanted to have something to hold in his hand when he went to speak to new potential clients. And this book gave everything, like their process, how they do things, what a change order is. They had a Gantt in there, because remember, pe clients, just regular residential people out there, they don't know a lot of this stuff, how they work up budgets, the weekly meeting, everything that was special about them, how they have a lot of women working at their firm. And there was one spread with just like 12 women from construction workers to women in the office. And they also had testimonials. In fact, these were at the front of the book behind, a beautiful sheet of vellum. This was like the first thing people saw was other people saying wonderful things about them. And there was also what I call the well of the book. Well is something that's usually used for magazines, but it means the middle of the thing, where you're showing the lush, beautiful photographs. And we had one that was, I think this was in Cambridge. So there was one that was kind of in town. We also had a condo right in Boston, and we had something more farmland-like. And the original plan was that we were going to eventually branch out and not just have one book, but three different books. One that was all about living in the city, that was all about living in the suburbs, and one that was all about living in the country. It never got that route, never went that full route, but they found this really valuable and they used it. And it made Eric, I mean, Eric is very comfortable talking to people, but this made him even more comfortable. And it was a great way to say people, we're organized. We know what we're doing, and we can tell you in a very methodical way what we're doing. Here's our deal. So they got a lot of use out of that. And in fact, this won an award from NARI for its presentation and its layout and its design. So there was a lot of pride with this all around. Another thing you can do is a physical newsletter. So Daniel, um, he sends out a newsletter 3 times a year to a group of about 40 people that he curates, and they are collaborators like um, builders and interior designers, and also some old clients that might use him again, or they're kind of influencer clients, right? They're very wealthy or they're well plugged in, and so they might talk to other people. The news, this is page on the right is page 1, and on the back is page 4 of this newsletter. So page 1 always starts an article about his secret sauce. And this one, But They Let My Neighbor Do It, was all about how he goes about getting permission from a local historic commission to do whatever it is the homeowner wants to do um, in in their historical space. If you look carefully here, right in the middle of the picture, there's a fence above a brick um, piece of facade, and they needed permission to build that fence. And he talked about how he deals with historical commissions, and then it became a longer article that went onto his website. And the back page is always something fun and whimsical. Here, it's about how he played with Lincoln Logs as a kid, and Lincoln Logs were actually invented by Frank Lloyd Wright's son when an earthquake in Tokyo in the 1920s kind of leveled all the buildings except the hotel his father had designed, because he had designed the foundation with this series of rolling logs that would let the building sway back and forth. So it was just kind of a big, neat, did you know? And then this is pages 2 of that same newsletter. The top is the continuation of the article on getting permission from historic commissions. And then on the bottom of pages 2 and 3, Daniel always shines light on somebody else. So this is a metal artisan that he works with who does like sink bases and some hardscaping outside and some roof detailing for him. And that's a good thing for you guys. To shine light on somebody you work with, that shines light on you. That makes you look good. That's saying I share the spotlight. I do this as a team. I get along with people and I'm happy to acknowledge them. So a newsletter is another way you can go. There's also award submissions. I don't know if any of you have ever applied to get like a Prism Award, say from Bragby, but it's complicated. You have to do a 500-word essay and you have to get just the right photos. And so sometimes I get hired to do to write up an award submission and choose the photos and come up with the order and how this should all be presented. And I've been pretty successful on that. I've gotten Bragby Awards for people. As I said, I've gotten NARI awards for people. And it's great for you if you get an award, because then you use that. You put it on your website, you put it in your social media, you post it, you brag it. And it's saying somebody else, this again, it's somebody else telling the story of how great you are. It's not you saying it, it's you saying somebody chose me to be the recipient of this accolade. And it can really work for you. Um, Another thing you might want to do in thinking about how people can write for you is have an event and invite me or other people, influencers, to come and see your project, because you don't know what will come out of it. So this is an architect named Hank Keating, and he designed a property in Westport called Stone Fruit Farm, which is completely passive. And he and his wife had lived in a drafty old house in Jamaica Plain, a Victorian, and this was the home of his dream. And he is passionately passive. He builds affordable housing with passivity in mind. And he had about 40 people there to an event. You know, there was coffee and I don't know, probably melon balls. I don't remember, but it was a nice day. And he spoke, and the valet group was the one who built this. So they spoke. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. And he was a really nice guy too. And I pitched this at the time. I don't know if you remember Design New England magazine. Gail Rev Gallo was the head of it. It was owned by the Boston Globe. I pitched it to her. She picked it up and he got publicity. And He was really glad for it. So that's another thing you can do. Think about if you have a great project or a great aspect of a project, do have people come to see it because they may think of ways to do something with it that you haven't thought of. Um, there's ghostwriting too. So I know an architect out in Western Massachusetts. His name is Zach Colbreath, and he was invited to write an article for Qualified Remodeler on a loft in Sowa that he redid for an artist. She had this tiny, cramped, skinny kitchen, like off in a cave, right inside the entrance to the home, and she wanted the kitchen moved to the main room of the loft. And this was an article about how he did that. And Zach is a great guy. He's not a writer, but he was able to talk to me about his process. For instance, I don't know if you can see those curves in the soffits, but the owner of the condo, she wanted curves in her house. She originally wanted curved cabinetry, but she couldn't afford it. So he and the soffits couldn't be moved, so he put the curves in the soffits, and the soffits actually became kind of a framework for the kitchen, which was good because then the kitchen is in this right out there in the big room, right? But it's kind of not drawing undue attention to itself. It's in this, like I said, frame of something else, so kind of puts it a little more in the background a bit. And Zach was really happy with this, and I came up with what I thought was this really cool title, Catch the Waves, because of the waves in the soffits. But that's another thing. You might be asked to write something or want to write something at some point, but you're not a writer by trade, and you hire somebody to do it for you, and there's back and forth, and of course you get to approve it. It's your thing at the end. Um, Another thing that I do for architects is client communications, and it's really important to um, say things to, particularly to potential clients, but even clients you have in just the right way. So this was somebody who wanted to work on a house that they really wanted this project, and they had written up a preliminary report and hadn't heard back from the people. And I said, why don't I draft something for you to send to them, making it clear how much you really want this? Because I felt they hadn't really made it clear in the initial report. And it was just checking in to see where you might be in your deliberations, Ray Harmony Lane. I hope I've been clear that I'd be thrilled to work on this project and deliver exactly what you want to feel good about the house and comfortable in it. And if you have any feedback, and on what I've stand or would like to discuss further, please let me know. It's just a way of saying I'm here, not overdoing it, not underdoing it. This architect, he wanted to go the route of time's a waste and I need to know. And I said, why say that? You want this. There's no point in potentially irritating them. Just be clear that you'd really like to do this. And different situations call for different approaches, but sometimes your copywriter can be your shrink and say, no, I think you're going to do better if you say it that way. And that's a really important use of writing. So I've told you all of these things that a copywriter can do for you. So let's go over them again. Somebody said to me, after you have told everybody everything, tell them what you've told them. So that's what this slide is going to be about. So a copywriter can set up print ads for you. They can write about you for mass market media with you just feeding them information and they're pitching the article themselves and going off and writing it. They can do social media posts, which might go on Instagram, it could go on Facebook, it could go on LinkedIn, or all of the above. They can help you draw from yourself what it is that's special about you and getting you to run with that, and they can brainstorm with you about how to tell your story, which again isn't always exactly the story of you as an architect. Maybe it's a story that's adjacent to your story of you as an architect. You know, I told you a story at the beginning of this presentation, and I told it to you through the lens that I wanted you to hear it. Architecture really is important to me. The built environment really is important to me. And I do think it's because I grew up in such a drab place as a kid and was missing um, things that I really appreciated that weren't in the environment I lived in. But of course, that's a piece of my story of my life, right? But you got to hear my story in 10 slides. You learned a lot about me. not just that the built environment is important to me, you learn that humor is important to me. You learn that I'm earnest, um, and that I'm a pretty linear thinker. You might not have thought that consciously, but subconsciously, um, you got the point that I'm not like a spokes on a wheel kind of thinker with things going in all kinds of directions. I'm a very linear thinker. So, you have a story that you want to tell through one lens or certain lenses or a certain set of lenses. And sometimes talking with somebody else can get you to that point. Um, we also talked about how you can potentially go from a website tweak or a website overhaul to something in between, or maybe a writer writes your book for you, whether it's about your overall approach to achieving a vision or the nuts and bolts of how you work. Or a focus on one or more particular projects if you really want to go that route, or all of the above. A copywriter also can get testimonials from clients and collaborators in a way you can't, because they're going to be honest with a third party in a way that they're not going to be with you. And it's great to get testimonials. I can't emphasize that enough because it means somebody with no vested interest is telling your story, and that gives everything about you even more credibility. My own thing when I do testimonials is I try to meet with the person in person, and I bring them a little something. It's a little tea cake or just something to thank them for their time. And I get real feedback from them. And sometimes I also get some negative feedback. Um, Obviously not a ton, because whoever you send me out to talk to, you feels favorably about you. But sometimes it's constructive feedback, like, oh, I wish they had just done that differently. And then I bring it back to you and you learn something that the client may not have told you themselves because they didn't want to get into a thing with you, or it wasn't a very big deal. But it's like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Okay, I'll remember that for next time. Or, yeah, they said that, but they were a jerk. I don't care. Nobody else feels that way. But it's good to hear all the feedback, the good and bad. And again, that third party, that writer can get that for you. Finally, a writer can put together for you a newsletter or even a periodic e-zine. And we haven't talked about e-zines, but you get them in your inbox once a month or once every so often. Somebody sends you their electronic version of their magazine, right? And it will either talk about things they've done, things they are working on, things that they find interesting. And if they're carefully done, they can go a long way. I got one a few months ago. I won't say the name of the company, and in truth, I don't remember the name of the company right now. But a lot of that particular easing that month was about a party they threw, and it was a great party, and they had all of their best people there. And I felt like you sent me a magazine online to tell me you threw a great party and I wasn't invited. Like, I just felt that was so the wrong pitch. What are you getting at? Like, you're really cool and I wasn't let in. So there are ways to do an e-zine that sell you really well too. A writer can help you with writing award submissions. They can help you get out the word about an event, which is important. You can't just throw an event, you have to tell people you're throwing it. And I am an event planner as well as a writer, so somebody like me can even help you plan an event, but you don't need the writer to help you plan the event. But think about that. It could even be a dinner party or something in a new space. Then there's the ghostwriting, which we talked about, and communications with clients and also potential clients. But there's something else that comes with this package of all these things a writer can write for you. Um, I'm very comfortable writing. I don't have writer's block. I don't get the willies if I see a blank screen. I look forward to writing, but a lot of people don't enjoy it. And so when you hire a writer to do things for you, you don't have to go through that whole business of, oh, gee, how do I get this done? And I'm not comfortable and I don't know how to say it. The writer is doing all of that. I don't mean you don't have to spend time with them, because you do. They have to draw you out of yourself and you have to tell them things they didn't know. But you can just react instead of act. And that's a lot of anxiety off your shoulders. And I think that's a really important reason to work with a wordsmith who's very comfortable in the world of words. it's like I can't draw you your house. Believe me, you did not want me to draw you your house, but I can react to visions. Um, and it's the same for you. You may not be the most comfortable writer, but you can react to a piece of writing that sheds light on you and your story, and that's just so much easier than having to come up with it at the beginning. And then when you do that, when you've hired this copywriter, you are getting more clients or you're getting choosier about your clients, which a lot of people want. They say, I have enough business, but I want to be able to choose my clients better. And you can go off and relax at the beach because your copywriter has done all the hard work for you. And now you've earned this extra money because you've gotten yourself out there in a way that you hadn't before. So it comes to, are you a big enough deal to do this? And my answer is, fuck yes. You are worth it. Just like the girls in the L'Oreal commercial. Like, you're important. You're doing this. This is your world, your life, your everything. And I think you should really think about devoting some time and money to putting yourself out there in a way that you haven't yet. And you might say, well, do I have the time to do this? And I would say, do you have the time not to do this? The sand is running through the hourglass, and this is your opportunity. You're in the prime of your career, and you want to make more out of it, and you want to squeeze something out of it. I would say you can make the time. And by the way, even if you have a strong ongoing relationship with a copywriter, you're probably putting 1 or 2 hours a week into it. They're going away on assignment and creating something for you that might take more time, but it's not like you have to devote a day a week to this. That's why you're hiring somebody to do it, so they can devote some significant time to it. And then the other question is, can you afford this? And the answer is yes, you can afford it because, first of all, you don't have to, let's say you've never done anything like this before. You don't have to start whole hog. You can just say to a copywriter, can you review my website and give me some feedback? How do you think it goes over with people? And for that, you're only going to need an hour or two. And you're wondering, well, how much does a copywriter cost? So I don't talk to all the copywriters of the world, but I think a reasonable guesstimate is that they're somewhere between 100 and 200 an hour. So if somebody spends a couple of hours on your website and gives you valuable feedback and you spent a few $100s, that could be worth it to you, because you want to, at the end of the day, you probably want to drive people to your website. So you can tiptoe into it. You can get your toes wet that way, just saying, just talk to me, or let's just have an information session. And so I think that's a really important thing. And also, if you do develop an ongoing relationship with a copywriter, they may make a deal with you where they're on retainer, like for every month you get this amount of work for them, and then they're not exactly charging you by the hour. You're getting more per hour because you're guaranteeing them a certain amount of work each month, and that's worth something to them. So if you decide to work up to that ongoing thing that it always happens, it gets a little cheaper. And don't forget, oh, with the website review, sorry, I just wanted to go over this. So I just took on a new client who actually owns an HVAC company, and he asked me to do a website review for him. And I'll just tell you some stuff. So this is his homepage. And the first thing I said to him are these your kids? And he said, no. And I said, okay, good, because they have to go. Because adorable children with chef toques putting flour on each other's noses doesn't say anything about HVAC. And I suggested to him, you want to have a beautiful picture that bleeds to the edges of the screen of a family in bare feet, no socks on, and there's a winter scene outside, with large glazing, and there's snow and pine trees, and they're having coffee and at the computer, and the kids are playing, and it's suggesting I make you comfortable in your home. It's winter outside and really cold, but they're walking around in their bare feet. I mean, that's just one possibility, but this didn't sell the HVAC company. The other thing I suggested to the guy was, your green is kryptonite. Superman is dying. Do you have something softer? And he said, well, everybody in my area, this is not a Massachusetts person, all of my competition uses red, white, and blue, and I wanted to stand out. And these are the colors on my trucks and I can't change them now. And I said, okay, I get that. So maybe what you do is you blend these greens into something like maybe your scene has green upholstered couches in it so that the your greens still stand out, but they don't create seizures when you're looking at them. So it was just some feedback I gave this guy, but he actually I don't think has too much to worry about because this is the homepage of his one of his biggest competitors. So I think even the kids in the Chef Tokes is better than this, so he'll be okay. Um, so I'm trying to think, was there anything else? Oh, yes, your copywriter is tax deductible. Remember, for every, you write off your copywriting as a business expense. So for every dollar you spend, you're really in the end only spending about 75 cents in that neighborhood, right? So that's important to remember too. So if you um, every $100 you spend is more like every $75 you spend that you are spending. So I think with that, I'll end here. If you want to, there's lots of copywriters out there. I am, of course, the best one, but I'm not the only one. If you want to find me, you can go to larrylindner.com. And if you do go there, you will even find out which of these kids is me. And I think with that, I will stop sharing and I'm happy to take any questions or comments or um, whatever you'd like to talk about.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it.
Sure.
As everyone can tell, Larry does not sidestep his he will tell you what he's thinking. Let's just put it that way. Which is refreshing air at times. And yes, the secret sauce is staying on top of me. Do we have any questions for Larry? I have a couple queued up, but I'd rather hear from everybody else. Questions, comments, observations?
I've actually got a question. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes.
I do hear you. I can't tell who you are, but I can.
I can, why don't I flip my screen on here? Show the world. Hey, that was great. Thank you so much for sharing all that information. That was really insightful. I work with an architecture studio and, we dabble in writing. We could always, learn to improve a little bit more. Um, Do you like to focus on any specific language? I mean, is there anything you're trying to, do you try to create vivid imagery in your writing? I mean, can you describe sort of what the content you're focusing on and sort of how you're expressing it? Is it positive? Is it descriptive? I mean, walk us through your insight.
It just depends. I and I'm not being cagey by saying that. I guess to answer your question as best as possible, what I'm trying to help an architect do is leave an impression. I'm trying to help somebody, I'm trying to help it so that so somebody reads what an architect has to say and doesn't forget it. They walk away thinking, wow, I love that person's work, or wow, I really like that person, or gee, I never thought of it that way. Um, so it just depends on what is coming across at that time. But I think and sometimes it's very descriptive, and sometimes there's humor in it, or sometimes it's very serious. But it's very much a matter of so much goes by people's feed and whatnot all the time. There are so many things that are pushed in front of us that we're asked to read, and you really only have a few seconds to capture people's attention. So if you can help an architect say something that sticks with people, that people remember, and that makes them think, oh, it came from that person. That's really cool. I'm not going to forget that. To me, that's what I'm focusing on. Does that
No, it
answer your?
does. That was amazing. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Oh, I'm nothing if not amazing.
Nice.
Others?
Larry, when you talk about learning somebody's story, what are kind of the techniques that you use, unbeknownst to us, to kind of pull that story out?
Okay.
If
That's a
someone's
good,
as talkative as I am.
yeah. If you so um I'm a very outgoing person and I think that helps make people comfortable. I don't mind taking the lead in conversation. And I am and always have been a very interested person. So I ask a lot of questions and I don't zoom in and say, what kind of work do you do and what are you working on now? And what's your mojo? I say, hi, how are you? And oh, how did what, where do you live? And we just talk. We have a conversation. And I mean, they know why I'm there, right? But it's a matter and this is true for getting testimonials too. I try to make an architect comfortable talking about themselves because, as you well know, Daniel, architects have a lot to say and they don't even realize they have it to say. So I try to get it not prepared. It's not like here are the 10 questions I ask and let me see what answer you give. It's this wide-ranging conversation about an architect's interests, what's important to them, how they like to work, who they like, what they don't like. And then, of course, there's what have you been doing these days, or what are you really proud of that you've worked on? But it's like meeting somebody at a cocktail party and just saying, oh, I don't know you, you know me, why don't we talk? And just getting to a comfortable, warm place from there. That 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 I think is very important. That's how I draw an architect out of themselves, from themselves. Just two people talking. Everybody has a really interesting story. Um, but most people don't wear their really interesting story on their sleeve, and you're not going to get it by going right after the story. You're going to get it by chatting, getting to know the person. And if they feel comfortable, they're going to say things that are important then rather than if they feel like, I'm being interviewed.
You could probably write a whole book about this, but I'm curious, what kind of common mistakes architects make in writing from your experience.
Oh, um, I feel this is actually an easy one, Kyle. I feel that a lot of times architects are talking to other architects when they write. Um, it like you don't need to say fenestration. You can just say windows. Um, people, so I have neighbors who just moved in next door and they want to do an addition. They want to bump out the kitchen on the first floor and above that put a master bath and a second floor laundry. And they don't know words like program. They don't even know words like setback yet. Um, so if architects can just uh, talk to people the way they would talk to a close friend or their sibling or a parent and uh, just regular language, not jargon. I think that's a big mistake that architects make. And that's a lot of what I try to do is take an architect out of that and just talk to people where they're at. That makes sense?
Yeah, I know we're guilty of that. I was also thinking about, I don't know, I feel like we're sort of taught to write in this like intentionally abstract, sort of like verbose way. And so, I'm
You
sure
are
you
t-
like encounter really wild things in the work
you
that you
you
do.
you are taught to write like that and it serves a purpose, but that's not outward facing writing. That's something else. And you're not taught that writing. I you know it's just a completely different thing. That's talking inside the business. So what I do is I help you make that translation, and you help me help you make that translation. If you work with a writer, you're probably not. It's not like you're writing a first draft and they take it. At least not the way I do it. I just converse with you, and I'm taking notes like crazy as you're talking, and hopefully you'll come away and say, "Oh, did I say that? That's really cool." It works more like that.
Yeah. Let me just add a little personal, what I've learned working with you, Larry. And that is what I find interesting as an architect, as a designer, does not necessarily translate kind of in the same fashion to an outward facing presentation of myself. And so for the rest of the group, Larry does help me with social media, and we we have a standing appointment, and you should see me frantically trying to figure out what to pitch to Larry. And as we go through it, and I remember the first time we did it, you were basically, nah, that's a snooze. Next, what do you got? You know? And, and so Larry's adjacent enough to the industry to understand how we think, what is great content, what is great work. But he's also far enough away and in the heads of or the eyes of the mainstream of what will be interesting to people that we want to work with. And I think that's your comment about we write for our own other architects and other designers, and very, very, very seldom are they our clients. And so we are trying to find out who our next prospective client is going to be, and we that's who we need to be talking to. And so it comes down to how we talk to them through the words, the images that we present, how we present ourselves, especially as small practices. It really is about people want to be working with us. So,
One of the things when we first started talking, Daniel, one of the things you said to me was a potential client will come to me and they say, I want to turn my kitchen from 10 to 12 to 10 to 22 or 12 to 15. And I want to add a window there and I want to add a window there. And I always listen to them. And then I ask them, how do you want to feel in your space? And uh, to me, that was very powerful. I never thought about I didn't realize architects thought that way. I thought they talked about square footage and things like that. And it resonated. And it didn't just resonate for me. So these next door neighbors of mine have just moved in and they want to hire an architect and they're going to do stuff. And I was talking to the wife and she's anxious. And how do I get this right? And I said, Gina, a good architect won't just have a conversation with you about what you want to do. They'll say to you, how do you want to feel in your new kitchen? Is it going to be an entertaining kitchen for fellow professionals? Is it going to be for making pancakes for the kids on the weekends? Is it something else? And I could see this light go on. She was like, oh, it just opened up a world to her. And I don't know if that was a throwaway for you, Daniel, but it resonated for me and it apparently resonates for others as well. So it's that kind of thing, guys. You're thinking things as an architect, and to you, they're second nature. But while I am architect adjacent, I'm not so steeped in it that I'm not able to step back and say, oh, that's significant. I like that. They've said that in a way that nobody else has. That's what's important. You're all doing the same thing, right? You're all designing kitchens and bathrooms and additions and mudrooms and everything else, but you all have your own singular way of thinking about it and looking at it and um, communicating with clients. And that's what makes you interesting, and that's what makes you right.
does anyone on the webinar use a copywriter already or have used one in the past? And what's your experience been?
Hello?
Yes,
You guys hear
Pam?
me? Yeah,
Yeah.
I use one all the time.
And what's your experience?
It's unbelievable. I can't write. And I will send my cup just actually I just got a call from her. We're working on a proposal for a client together.
That's
Uh,
a great use.
Also, she's helped me write letters, not letters, articles that have been published, in local stuff, in bigger magazines. I don't know how I do it without her. So, yeah. it's constant for me. Thank you, Larry. I definitely,
No, this is great to hear, Pam, and it's great to hear that I'm not out on a limb. Like what you're saying is your experience with your copywriter is what I'm saying copywriters can offer. So
yeah, well, I live in the same town as Zach, and I'm like, geez, boy, he got out there in an article. But she has my copywriter has kind of banged it over my head. Get it out there, get it out there, get it out there. I've just listened to a podcast or by Mel Robbins, and she basically talked about 2 years of not putting anything out there. Once you put it out there, you're good. You just got to get it out there.
yeah, and you have something to get out there. It's really good. And I love to hear about Mel Robbins because my niece is Melanie Robbins. So I always like to hear people say Mel Robbins.
Sure. All right. Thank you very much. I'm gonna
Thank
have to
you.
go. I appreciate your time, Larry, and it
Oh,
was a
thanks,
great
thanks,
webinar.
thanks,
Bye-bye.
thanks for your comments. Bye.
So, Larry, thank you, and thank you for spotting Wilson Butler. I would say that, I do things in-house, but I find consultants such as Larry very, very beneficial because sometimes your internal team wouldn't, not that my team doesn't listen to me, but it's a new perspective. And the fact that you are paying for a consultant make them more focused on what that person is talking about. So, and I always find they are a great ally when I can advance a certain agenda with the storytelling or press coverage. So I find them like they are great allies for your team. So even if you do it internally, it's very beneficial to hire a consultant from time to time.
That's great, Maria. And all, but I have to say, you guys, your niche is so clear. Like the
Mhm.
world of architects is not building cruise ships, so you always have something to say, and you have venues to say it in that many architects don't. Like there are travel magazines
Yes.
and cruise magazines and all different kinds of things. So you're in a really enviable spot.
Yeah, it's very competitive. We do performing arts, so everybody wants to build one, and
Yeah, there
we
is
also
that.
do that. But it's true that when Icon of the Seas came out, I mean, one of the things that we did, we managed to get the first page one of the Boston Globe,
Oh, that's so great. Congrats.
because I have never seen. And what happens sometimes, and this is something for all people here, when writers talk about buildings, they always forget about the architect. I used to work at the BSA, and it was the most frustrating thing. Please, can you mention the architect? So I think the architects should do more communication and press to get the name out, because those buildings don't appear out of nowhere. These companies put a lot of effort into it. So yeah, I think that Larry, you are like a blessing.
Yeah. So you are so right. Like architects have to get where interior designers are. Interior designers are very happy to spend $5,000 having their spaces photographed by Michael Lee and then pitching it to AD and New England Home and all of those. So architects can get on that too. And there's no reason they shouldn't. Without architects, there are no curtains. There are no colors on the cabinets. There's no nothing. Nothing got built. So yeah.
Larry, I think one of the fears that many of my colleagues have is that I don't have the photos. The client never hired an interior designer, so the furniture is the old stuff that was put back. And how do you deal with that sort of maybe misconception? Because it certainly was a conception of mine. I mean, I do have some professionally photographed stuff, but I also have my iPhone. And so how do you kind of join those, say, no, you can get out there, and how do you do it when you don't have those pristine, you know, photos that we've paid thousands for?
So except for articles in shelter magazines, and shelter magazines are like AD and Dwell and New England Home and all those. Except for those, your phone is enough. Your phone is enough for social media posts. Your phone is enough for your e-zine. It's enough for your physical newsletter. It's not going to be enough if you want to do your own book or have some kind of printout that you take to each people. So for certain things, you are going to have to hire a photographer if you want to pitch. And it costs some money, but I would say to the people in this room now, um, if you haven't done any marketing communications in a serious way, don't start there. Don't start by spending several $1,000s taking pictures of something in the hopes that it will get in someplace. Start with simpler, less expensive things and get your feet wet and go from there. And yeah, at some point you may want to hire a Michael Lee or I happen to love Nat Rea's work. I don't think he gets enough credit. His last name is Rea, and have them come out and photograph a project in a way that highlights you rather than what the interior designer does. Um, yeah, it may come to that at certain points. That's okay. You'll get something out of it. It goes up on your website, it goes in your social media. You know, that there it's a wave. What you pay to have done, you can use in a variety of different ways. It doesn't just live in one place. Remember, it could live on your website too. Does that help, Daniel?
No, it does. It does. And, a little trick for my colleagues, one thing that I did, because, when I went out on my own, I didn't have anything, right? Other than what I had worked on for other firms. And sometimes they let me use it, sometimes they didn't. And so I had a friend who had a very nice camera. She was really trying to be in the wedding business. We were roommates when I was in grad school. And I took her out for half a day to a couple sites where I had meetings with contractors and clients. And I said, follow me around the job site. It was a construction site. And I said, she's like, well, what do you want me to photograph? And I said, anytime I point at something, click the camera, hit the button. And so I have thousands of photos of me going like this and this and this. But those are things that I can use because as a sole practitioner, I mean, I can't be taking selfies all the time on a job site. And so I got photos of me interacting with the homeowner as a team with the clients and, trusses being raised, me looking up into the sky and all things like that. And not only is it fun just to document kind of our life in architecture, so that when we're 80 years old, we kind of have a record of what we did. But it was a really cost-effective way for me to just start getting some good photos while working. And so people knew that I was a working architect. I was out there with the build team and the clients and, rolling up my sleeves, that kind of thing.
One thing I would say to everybody is if you are beginning work on a project that you know is going to be dynamite, that you're really going to be able to put your stamp on, go around and take a bunch of before photos because to my view, nothing sells a project like before and after. The shelter magazines don't get this. They don't want to devote real estate to before photos, but HGTV gets it. You don't just see the end product, you see what it was. That's the whole show, right? Watching the transformation. The transformation is boring, but the before and after, they're not boring. That they're where it's at. So take before pictures. I so often say to architects, well, what did it look like before? Oh, I don't have a shot, or maybe I have something, but it's the wrong angle. Before pictures you can do on your own.
Great. Any questions from the remaining participants? I mean, if there aren't, Larry, do you want to put a pretty little bow on the event here? And
I thank you all for coming. I can't believe you stayed for over an hour to listen to me. And I'm happy to talk to you offline if you'd like to reach out to me just to have a conversation. And I hope you got something out of it. So
Kyle,
thanks.
would you like to say something?
No, just I mean, thank you for organizing, Daniel, and thank you, Larry, for presenting. It was great.
Great.
So, thanks for joining us. And again, thank you, Larry. And how can people reach you?
If you go to my website, larrylindner.com, there's a place to contact me and I will find you back.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. Well, look for the recording on the BSA's website under the knowledge committees. And as Kyle said, we'll post it under all three knowledge committees. And It just takes a while for the BAC to edit. So if you don't see it in 3 or 4 weeks, don't panic. It usually gets put up there. All right. Well, everyone have a great rest of the week and onward into 2025.
Thanks again, guys.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.